what we're going to focus more on today is about, some of the issues that you can resolve or help resolve with Reveille, or at least be notified early enough. Because one of the main reasons for using Reveille is to ensure you're always aware of exactly what's happening with your Documentum environment. Now, what the 4 issues we've actually selected, the use cases that we're going to go through, are based around our experience with our Documentum clients. So the system, as Bob mentioned, can address numerous different issues, can check for numerous different performance and usage criteria and events. But specifically, we've seen these 4 crop up numerous times on our clients, and that's why we thought they may be of interest. So the 4 specific use cases cover connectivity, so database connectivity and connection issues to the Documentum content server. It looks at session counts, the number of active session counts in the system, and how that affects backend performance. We're looking at full text indexing, so how Explore processes the indexing queues and where there's problems with that. And then we'll look at overall application performance, so a drop-off in level in performance, and what we can do and how we can address that. Now, what you can see at the moment is the user console. This is where you start to go and start to do investigation and start looking into the issues that may have occurred. But before you actually even go to this interface, what you'll have received is an email notification or a ticket in a ticketing system or a text message telling you there's something that you need to take a look at. Because Reveille is constantly looking at the environment. And because of our knowledge of exactly what's happening, we can tell you when you need to go and take a look at that, when you need to go and investigate and start to figure out what's happening on the system. You're not waiting for the end user, the business user, to come and tell you either the system's not available or it's running slow or they can't get access or the document they need is not available. You're already ahead of that curve. So from here, we're going to drill down into our monitors. And a monitor is really just part of the structure we're looking at. You can see here we've got OpenText, different monitors, things like extended ECM, Documentum, Info Archive, Capture, etc. They're product-based monitors, but in reality, in a production environment, they wouldn't be product-based. They'd be probably server-based or functional area. So you wouldn't have just one monitor for Documentum. You'd have multiple server monitors, or you'll have multiple functional areas that are your broken down monitor. If we drill down to the next level, you can see this is all color coded, and the color is telling us there's issues with the system. Now, I've got a lot of issues with my Documentum environment. I've forced it into error on all of those 4 use cases. So you can see those reflected in this dynamic diagram. These are all of the areas that we're monitoring within this monitor, and all of that's reflected on that handout that Ryan's made available via the webinar. So you can download and see all of the different tests we cover. But specifically in this environment, you can see there's 4 different areas: content server activity, performance, Explore, and the backend database. And the first one I'm going to look at it is the actual database. So what's happened here is, and again, this is something we've seen on numerous occasions. What Reveille is actually looking for is an event and like an error message within the content server, the Documentum server. And this connection error, this message appears roughly 2 hours before the server crashes. We've seen this on numerous occasions, that this database connection error that's flagged up against the Documentum server, it doesn't mean the server is going to go down straight away, but it means it will go down over a period of time. Now, we haven't got a fix for this. We're not saying that we can automatically fix this problem and resolve it for you, but what we have is a workaround. So we know that organizations that are looking for this error, that they know when that occurs, what they'll do is they have to manually go in and check for this on a regular basis. What with Reveille we're doing is we're automating that process. We're looking for this error message. As soon as we see that, what we want to do is restart the service, restart the Documentum server service. Now, we do that with what we call a proactive job. So you can see here that monitor that we were looking at previously. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. So you can see that was the same monitor as we're looking at here, that database issue. This is the underlying admin client for Reveille, and this is where we initially set up the system. And you can see here against the database, we have the problem. If we go into that database, what we call resource, you can see down here we have proactive actions. So as soon as we encounter that issue on the system, as soon as we see that error, we'll restart that Documentum service. And that almost like restarts the clock. So we now know that the system in 2 hours is not going to go down again, that it's that we've provided a workaround so the end user is not going to be affected by that particular error. Now, that doesn't mean the error is resolved, but it means that the business is not impacted by it. Now, the next one we're going to look at is active session count. So if we go back into the browser, instead of looking at here, we can see this here. We can see we've got a couple of different issues flagged up here. We've got one around memory percentage, CPU load, and also this active sessions has gone above the layer we'd expect. But rather than looking at here with just the error messages, what we can do is we can actually go over to here and look at our dashboards. So a dashboard is a visualization of the data we're gathering from the backend system. So if I go down to Documentum Performance, what I can see here is not only the active sessions that are being captured and the evaluation for that active session. So we can see we're breaking that. So the number of active sessions has gone higher than we would expect. What we can also do, and we don't have to do that, but we have got that capability for infrastructure monitoring, which a lot of the Documentum administrators find useful because it may be gathered by another team as well, but it allows them to quickly look at how the servers are performing. We can look at things like CPU load and the memory percentage committed for those backend content servers as well. So we can see now that the active sessions has gone far higher than the expectations for the system. Maybe we've had additional users have come on board. Maybe we have a server has gone down that we need to restart. But again, it's flagging this up to us, telling that the load on the servers has gone up, and also the number of active servers has gone up. Now, again, if we go back into the admin client and we look at this against the content server activity, again, we can see here we might have the ability to, for example, restart the application server. So in other words, that you can carry out multiple proactive actions dependent on the issue you have. And again, from that, you can see here, we have a whole collection of different actions you can carry out. There are some product-specific ones, for example, for Documentum, but there's also generic ones for things like restarting services, processes, etc., either locally or remote location. And then there's also the ability to do things like run PowerShell scripts. So you could run a PowerShell script to do really whatever you wanted to at that instance to complete that action. Now, the next issue we're going to look at is full text indexing. So in this instance, if we go back into our monitor, we can see there's an issue with Explorer. And again, just on that, while I'm looking at Explorer, you can see the different colors on here. And again, you can probably see that more clearly on here. So there's different colors in each of the monitor. The color represents the status of the issue. So in other words, or the severity of the issue. So in other words, these green and blue monitors, there's no issue with those. They're running correctly. So we could filter those out. The orange monitors are telling us there's a warning. So it might not be mission critical, but it is a warning telling us something is going wrong. And then this red one, this is telling us this is a Sev1 issue. That was the database issue we were looking at there. And that's basically telling us that the system is about to go down. So we need to act on that appropriately. And you define the level of severity in each of those. So you can see here that the Sev1 has taken priority, even though we have multiple warnings on this monitor. The Sev1 issue, the database connectivity issue, is flagged up as red. So the monitor is seen as red because that's the most severe issue that we're encountering here. Now, on the Explorer side, we can see here that, again, what we're looking at is the index pending count. And that should be normally within a range. We'd expect that to be lower than a certain volume because the system Explorer server is processing those full text indexing jobs. It's taking them off the queue. But if that goes above a certain layer, we know that there's an issue on the actual service itself. It's not processing those correctly. And again, we can see that if we go back into the dashboard, we'll go into the Documentum dashboard here. And I've combined everything on this one dashboard. Realistically, you'd have these separated out. You might have an Explorer dashboard, backend content server, looking at different information. But from a demo point of view, it allows us to look at everything in one screen. So here you can see if we scroll down, we've got those active sessions, CPU and memory. But if we scroll down a little bit further, we've got full text indexing health. So this is the pending queue we're looking at. And we can see that that's gone above the predefined level. So it's not processing in the way we'd expect. We'd expect this to be generally declining. And as it's processing that information to a point where it gets to zero, but it's not. It's going up and it's not being processed quickly enough. So we need to take a look at that and do something about it. And again, if we go back into our monitor and take a look at what we're doing in the background, here you can see the proactive action is actually restarting the Explore service. So maybe there's an issue with one of the documents it's indexing, maybe it's been locked, etc. In this instance, we know that there's a memory leak, so we're just going to restart the service, and we know that will start kick off and start indexing those documents again. Now, the final one is really just around general performance. Reveille has the ability to not only go into the system and test it and make sure it's running in the way we'd expect, we also have the ability to go in and actually look at end user transactions. So get a better understanding of how users are interacting in the system and how it's performing for them. So in other words, we can look at traffic where we can look at network traffic. We can pick up transactions between things like the WebTop D2 and custom interfaces, and we can see what the user is doing and how the system is performing for them as well. So again, against that, what we've got on the performance side here is it's telling us, let's take a look at it from here actually. It's telling us there's a performance issue. Again, and here we're looking at the average transaction time. And if it goes above a certain level, again, we know that that's an issue. Now, in this instance, there's not an automatic fix. There's not something we can say, right, if we restart the service, it's going to fix it. But what we can do at this stage is say, right, okay, well, what we want to do is send out a performance report, maybe a KPI report, an SLA report to the management team. So automate that process. And that report can cover all details of performance. It can also include the dashboard as well. So we might want to include a copy of this dashboard and send that out as part of the report as well. So, so not only are we letting the users know that there is an issue around performance, we're sending out the details of that issue, and we're sending out the reports showing them how performance has dropped off and what they may need to do about that. So again, if we scroll down here, you can see some of the additional information. So we can see the transaction performance has gone higher, the average transaction performance. We can also look at how that compares with other elements, things like DQL query performance time against the backend server, or even against the backend database, we can test SQL query performance time as well. So we have a whole collection of information that this can be generated as a PDF and sent out to the management team. So they've got a complete insight into exactly how the system is running. And if they need to go and do maybe order additional resources, additional servers to manage that performance level, they have that capability to do that now because they have the back end knowledge to justify that acquisition.